Be strong.
Young-hyuk releases him, and he falls to the ground, and he falls from the sea. Young-hyuk says he believes that he is really a prophet, but he makes him fall into the mouth of the serpent. A notification appears there saying he has failed to clear the scenario. After a while, he is still alive and is struggling to keep holding his breath, but he has to hold on because he can't pass out. He somehow manages to come to its stomach without getting ripped apart and digested. He uses his flashlight to see inside, and there are a lot of dead bodies inside his stomach. He tries to get outside and thinks Young-hyuk is just a psychopath. He wonders if this is some kind of test, and he wants him to prove his worth to him as a companion. He now understands why he is doing this, and he has never made a true companion since he failed his first ever round. Being a regressor, he was powerful, and people revered him as their savior. Because of this, he naturally became a lone wolf. To him, all humans are either his subordinates or his enemies, so this is most likely a test, and he wants him to prove himself if he wants to be treated as his equal. He opens his message log and fails to clear the scenario, and his 100 points have been deducted for the channel usage fee. There are many status windows like this there. He sits there calmly and thinks about his next schedule when the serpent starts moving, and the water inside him starts moving. According to TWSA, the stomachs of these ichthyosaurs start secreting acid around 3 minutes after they ingest their prey. In other words, he doesn't have a lot of time left, and he hears Dokkaebi's voice, who seems to enjoy the situation. He is surprised that Dokja doesn't seem flustered at all despite his situation, and he replies that he has been waiting for him. He thinks not only will he get out of there in one piece, but he will also obtain the power to stand as his equal. After that, he will have no choice but to accept him as his companion, while Dokkaebi asks him why he is waiting for him. Dokja says he has coins he has to collect from him since he failed the scenario, and Dokkaebi has to take his coins as a penalty. Dokkaebi says coins are not his life, but if he were going to take his life, then the penalty for failure would have said death instead of 3 question marks, which means there is room for negotiation. Dokkaebi is impressed that he has come to such a conclusion from that tiny clue, and no wonder all the constellations have their eyes on him. He says Dokja can buy his way out of failed sub-scenarios using coins. He exclaims that the price will be 5,100 coins, which is how much it will cost him to save his neck. Dokja is shocked to hear this many coins and thinks he has to be kidding him. He asks him for some negotiation because this is too expensive. Dokkaebi refuses and says he can go ahead and die. He exclaims that if he doesn't want to pay up, he can just call it quits there and now. Dokja gets up and asks him to kill him and thinks he won't lay a finger on him because he is drawing in quite a crowd for him right now. Right now, the constellations are having a blast because of him, and if he were just going to kill him, then he wouldn't have come all the way there to see him. Dokkaebi seems angry and asks what he is trying to do, and he calls him low-grade Dokkaebi Bihyung and asks how his career as a streamer is going. Dokkaebi is shocked and asks how he knows his name, and Dokja laughs and asks if the constellations have been rather stingy as of late. Dokkaebi gets angry and asks how a mere human can know about this, and he receives a notification that a few constellations have become suspicious of his identity. Dokja asks him to shut off the channel for a few minutes so that they can talk, and he does what he says. He then asks him to say what he has to say and asks him how he knows about the star stream when he is only a human. It is revealed that the star stream system is also known as the start stream, and it is the means by which footage is broadcast over the entire galaxy. The Dokkaebi are called streamers and the storytellers who bridge the two. Dokja asks him if he doesn't want to be the Dokkaebi king, and if he doesn't want to surpass the likes of Dokgak or Dildal and become the best streamer there ever was. He forwards his hand and asks him to enter into a contract with him, and he will make him the Dokkaebi king. Dokkaebi laughs at his demand and says he must be out of his mind, and he should have realized when he rejected all the offers from the constellations. Dokja thinks that he didn't choose any constellation during the sponsor selection right before the sub-scenario. Dokkaebi says he doesn't know how he knows about the star stream but can't accept his offer. He is Dokkaebi, not a constellation, so he can't be his supporting constellation. Dokja replies he never asked for him to sponsor him, and he is not after his power but his channel. He reveals that he wants to enter into an exclusive contract with his channel, and Dokkaebi surprisingly asks him what he is saying. He wants to enter a streaming contract with him. A stream contract is a contract entered into between constellations and the dokkaebis. For a share of the coins earned, a dokkaebi hosts an incarnation of a constellation on its channel. Usually, incarnations have no say regarding this contract, although they are sponsored. The truth is that constellations view incarnations as slaves. Dokkaebi laughs and says he has got quite a sense of humor, and he doesn't know where he heard about this, but how he dares to mention the stream contract. He exclaims that Dokja doesn't have any supporting constellation, and he replies that's exactly why he should accept his offer. He asks him why the constellation joined stream channels in the first place and thinks subscribers of the star stream can be divided into two groups. The first are the thrill seekers who hop through the channels looking for entertainment, and the second are the incarnation seekers who are in search of an incarnation to sponsor. Dokja tells Dokkaebi that if he wants his channel to flourish, he has to satisfy at least one of the two groups, either make their stream as entertaining as possible or try to find an incarnation that interests his subscribers. Dokkaebi asks him how this concerns him, and Dokja says his subscriber point is only a 3-digit figure. He asks him if there was a channel that could both entertain its subscribers and showcase interesting incarnations, but Dokkaebi says there is no way that is possible. Dokja says constellations that are looking for the incarnation to sponsor eventually leave the channel as soon as sponsor selection is over. But what happens if there is an incarnation that refuses to take on a supporting constellation? Moreover, what if that incarnation outperforms all other incarnations despite not having a supporting constellation? Dokkaebi asks if this was why he didn't choose a supporting constellation, and he replies that the constellations are in an uproar right now, asking him to open the channel. They are all probably dying to know who it was that dared to stand up against the regressor. But Dokkaebi asks him to stop what he just said, and he is full of himself because mere humans don't stand a chance against incarnation with supporting constellations. Dokja says this is what he plans to prove to him from this moment on, and all he has to do is shut his mouth and do what he says. Dokkaebi thinks for a while and says they have to start with checkout since they have failed the scenario, and if he pays him 5,100 coins, he can let him live. Dokja gets up and asks him to open the channel at that moment, saying it's going to start soon. Suddenly, he is shocked to see that a hidden scenario has arrived at the moment, and its clear condition is that he has to slay the sea commander. Their time limit is 10 days, and the penalty for failure is death. Dokkaebi opens the channel and asks the constellations to calm themselves. The stream was shut down because of an error in the server, and he didn't turn it off on purpose. He exclaims that he is only a Dokkaebi and would be exterminated if he did something like that. Dokja checks the attribute window, looks for the things he can only buy right now, and says there should be a search function. He thinks he threatened Dokkaebi to make him open the Star Stream Cash shop, and he opens up the Dokkaebi shop and checks out the things he can buy at the moment. The shop can only be opened while the channel is open, and this is why he has his hands full explaining what happened. Dokkaebi tries to convince his constellation, and Dokja asks him for help. He thinks dokkaebis are just greedy and no different from humans. He just needs to search for 2 items. He searches for the ancient dragon, and Dokkaebi is shocked at his demand and asks how he knows about it. Dokja replies he just said any cool name that came to his mind, and it is revealed that it is an SS grade item, and its price is 1.5 million coins, but it is currently not in stock. According to TWSA, he thinks the owner of this heart is in Italy, and he is a lucky guy because his sponsor is filthy rich and bought it for him. He then looks for Archdemon's Eyeball and White Star Weapon Aura, and at last, he buys bags of mucus and 4 thorns, and Dokkaebi asks him what use he has for those miscellaneous items. Dokja replies this is what he has to find out, and these 2 are some cheap items, and their price is 100 coins. He has spent 800 coins altogether, and Dokkaebi says there are no refunds. He receives a notification that the secretive plotter constellation is curious about his plan, and another constellation, the Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, is displeased with his every move. Dokkaebi is also angry with him and closes his channel. He says he didn't forget that he hasn't agreed to accept his offer yet. Dokja says they agreed to negotiate the terms of the contract only after he had successfully cleared this scenario. Dokkaebi takes his leave, says he will see if he can clear this scenario, and reopens his channel. After that, he thinks there isn't much time until the stomach acid is secreted, and he takes out a thorn. His aim is to attack the serpent from inside so that he can make it out from there alive. He then is ready to attack the serpent, while on the other side, he is swimming calmly in the sea. Suddenly, the serpent roars in a prominent voice with pain because Dokja has stabbed a thorn in his body from inside with his full power. He has stabs it in many parts of his body so that he feels a large amount of pain. It has been a long time since he was inside his body, and he wonders if he overestimated himself. After all, he is just an ordinary reader of Dokja and not the story's protagonist. He wonders if his mother is fine and thinks she should be fine since she is the mother of all people. He is getting tired and thinks the world before wasn't all that great either, but at least he didn't have to risk his life in the stomach of a giant fish. He has sent all the acidic juice outside with the help of thorns and is hanging with the help of another thorn. Suddenly, Dokkaebi appears there and says he should have handed it to him. He also receives notification that several constellations are impressed by his survival skills and have gifted him 100 coins. 4 days have passed since the hidden scenario, and he is still inside the serpent's stomach. Dokkaebi says it was unexpected because he didn't have any idea that he would use the thorns like that. He seems in a terrible condition and falls to the stomach, and with this, the hidden scenario has ended. He has received 9,000 coins as a reward, and is the first to hunt a Tier 7 sea monster successfully. He has also received 1,000 coins as an achievement reward and is happy that he is still alive. Dokkaebi tells him that stone hogs usually live on coastlines and prey on small sea creatures. They use their special thorns to pierce and then dry their prey to death. But he never thought that Dokja would use the thorns in this manner. A few constellations smile knowingly, and they now understand his decision. Dokkaebi says he never knew that the mucus of the hammer seahorse could be used as protection against the ichthyosaur's stomach acid. Dokja remembers that before the stone hog's thorn began working, he covered himself in what was left of the hammer's seahorse's mucus. He then drank the bodily fluid of the ichthyosaur that was funneled through the thorn to appease his hunger. Because of the fluid, his stamina level had increased. After that, it was a test of sheer willpower. He tells Dokkaebi that hammer seahorses are ichthyosaurs, so they have evolved to create a special mucus, and that's how he managed to survive in a pool of stomach acid. He says he is just helping Dokkaebi because he seems to be struggling. Meanwhile, an attribute window shows that his pain is partially nullified by his personal skill, the fourth wall. Dokkaebi says it was a fantastic survival drama, and Dokja asks him to open the Dokkaebi shop, and he stabs the thorn again in the serpent's body and finds the ichthyosaur's nucleus. He gives this to Dokkaebi and asks him to put this up for trade at the Dokkaebi auction house, and he won't trade this with anything else but broken faith. He wants to say something more, but Dokkaebi stops him and closes his channel for their conversation. They then make a stream contract agreement, and Dokkaebi says he wasn't sure at first, but watching him clear the hidden scenario helped him make up his mind. Dokja is surprised to see a complete written contract, and Dokkaebi says humans like this kind of thing. He thinks this is supportive, and he is getting a better deal than expected. He then says the contract is missing the most crucial part, which is the ratio, and Dokkaebi asks him to make it 50-50, and he won't charge him for channel usage to boot. They will split all the coins he is gifted in half, but Dokja says he is not an idiot. In reality, a constellation's incarnation makes an appearance on the Dokkaebi's channel, and the constellation shares the coins gifted by other constellations with the Dokkaebi, who owns the channel. Dokja says he doesn't have a supporting constellation, and when constellations gift coins to an incarnation who doesn't have a supporting constellation, they have to pay a hefty commission to the Dokkaebi. He is sure that Dokkaebi has already made quite a profit thanks to him. In return, he will take all the coins, and Dokkaebi should be fine with the commission, and he will not give him a single coin. Dokkaebi shouts at him and asks him to take 70%, but Dokja says either he takes all, or he will move on to another channel, and he heard Gildan's been doing well for himself these days. Dokkaebi seems so angry with him, but Dokja doesn't care about this and asks him if he can't see that the constellations are complaining. He receives notifications that the constellations complain due to the prolonged advertisement, and Dokkaebi agrees to his conditions. Dokja says he demands one more thing, the contract fee, and asks him to give 5,000 coins. After some time, he comes out of the serpent's stomach, and it's the first time he's breathing fresh air in 4 days. He thought it would only take him 2 days. Still, 4 days isn't bad, considering it took Young-hyuk 4 days on his 4th round. He also managed to sign a streaming contract with Dokkaebi and made quite a few coins in the process, so it's not a bad start. It's funny that he could never get anyone to sign anything before, but he has become somewhat extraordinary just for having read TWSA. His personal skill, the 4th wall, is still active, and he remembers when he told Dokkaebi that he couldn't access his attribute window and asked him to fix it. Dokkaebi tries to use system interference on him, and Dokja activates his personal skill, the 4th wall, and he doesn't expect this skill to block even Dokkaebi's interference. After that, he steps into the area of the second main scenario. He receives notification that the scenario area is highly contaminated and instructs him to hold his breath and quickly get underground. He tries to run away, but has been exposed to the poisonous fog, and the constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, smiles insidiously. This is the place where the real game begins. Many monsters are appearing under the ground, while Dokja goes to a store and fills many things in his bags. He again receives notification that the scenario is highly contaminated and asks him to hold his breath and quickly get underground. He is using Elaine Monkey's lungs to neutralize deadly poison and thinks he should go to safety soon because the item's effect will wear off soon. Suddenly, he hears a voice from behind where someone calls for help, while he is shocked at how someone can still be alive there. A girl is wearing a mask there and asks him for help. He lifts her on his shoulders and runs away from there. He thinks Aksu Station was destroyed because it was above ground, and the closest underground station from there is Jumho Station. Soon, he reaches there, but is surprised to see that the station is closed and thinks to go to the other side. The girl calls him and asks him to see the 4th exit. He goes there and tries to open the shutter, but people are already there and ask him to get lost from there. Dokja asks them to open up since he has an injured woman with him, but they reply that he can't come in because the place is already overcrowded. Dokja thinks it is strange that the place is overcrowded and wonders if this ever happened in TWSA. He then grabs the shutter and opens it with his full power. The people run away after seeing him, while Dokja has entered a safety zone. He then asks the girl to hold the mask in her mouth. She won't fully recover, but it will at least neutralize the poison. He wonders if there was any character like her in TWSA. Chances are, she probably never made it this far in the novel. He thinks to overlook her character profile, but in the meantime, many people approach them, and one of them asks him who he is. The constellation prisoner of the golden headband frowns at the appearance of the unwelcome guests, and Dokja tells his name to them. The man replies he didn't ask for his name and asks about his identity, and they recognize the girl from the minor group and ask others if she isn't supposed to have come back with them. Dokja thinks there are always stereotypical villains in the post-apocalyptic genre, and he finds out that this man's name is Chiolsu. His name doesn't ring a bell, and he doesn't remember him, so he guesses he isn't anyone he should be worried about. After a while, they ask him to hand that woman to them, and they also see his bags which seem to be filled with food. Chiolsu says if he leaves the woman and food there, then he will let him live there. Dokja thinks real humans are even more evil than the clichés in stories, and it looks like something bad is about to happen. There is also a notification that the prisoner of the golden headband is angered by the appearance of grunts. There is also a bounty hunter scenario that has been generated at the request of the constellations. He gets up, and Chiolsu asks him if he decided to ignore his advice. He shows his equipment to him, saying he will teach him not to mess with them. Chiolsu says he will give him a count of 3 and asks him to leave now or he is dead meat. In the meantime, the attribute window opens, and a bounty hunt named Scenario appears there and gives him a task to eliminate the grunts within the given time limit of 5 minutes, while the reward and penalty of failure are still unknown. He punches one of them and makes him fall at a distance, and they wonder who this guy is and how he is still standing after taking all those blows. Dokja thinks the sum of one's total stats, like stamina, strength, and agility, greatly affects the outcome of a battle. The sum of these stats for him is 33, but they are mostly in the single digits. It means that even if they have a supporting constellation, the difference in stats will determine who emerges the victor. He checks Chiolsu's character profile and his supporting constellations, and he is one lucky guy who overestimates his supporting constellation. After that, the Chiolsu Bang of the Chilasu gang is the bird brain from the Jumho Station group in TWSA. According to the novel, he should have been killed by Young-hyuk, but now he wonders why he is still alive. She also asks him if he has killed quite a few people to reach this place, and he can tell that he and Dokja are not all that different. Dokja remembers what he has done to reach all this and thinks he could have saved them. He remembers when Naemun said he just wanted to watch them fight for their lives, and he received a notification that the fourth wall had blocked the bluff of Cheolsu-bang. He uses his thorn to hit his arm, puts him against the wall, and says he shouldn't be running his mouth off like that. The constellation, monarch of the small fries, is amused by him and has gifted him 100 coins. Dokja thinks, unfortunately for him, his supporting constellation, monarch of the small fries, was infamous for not valuing its incarnations. He was going to finish him off quickly, but this changes everything, and a notification appears there saying there are 2 minutes remaining until the scenario ends. He's the masochist who supports only the biggest idiots and enjoys watching them suffer at the hands of other incarnations. The constellation, monarch of the small fried, is amused. Cheolsu begs him to leave him, and he wonders how humans can be so weak, but at the same time, they are cold-blooded and cruel. He grabs him by his collar and asks why he did this, but he asks him to kill him. Dokja thinks this is not because of his instinct or nature, but there is despair in his eyes that was there even before the world had ended. He thinks the despair in his eyes is just like him, and probably they aren't all that different. 10 seconds remain until the sub-scenario ends, and Dokja thinks the world has come to an end in any case. After that, the condition of the sub-scenario has been fulfilled, and he has received 300 coins, also 100 as a reward from the constellation monarch of the small fries. Dokja thinks he has to adapt to this new world and asks the others to take him to the place where the other people are. After some time, they reach the Jumho station, where there are many people, and the people of Cheolsu gang ask them for help. Songa and Hyunseong are also there, and she is shocked to see him there. They are happy to see him and rush toward him since he is still alive, and Hyunseong apologizes to him because he left him behind. They say that Young-hyuk was right, and he asks them what he said. Hyunseong says he said that Dokja probably is still alive. He asks them where he is, and they tell him that he is not there right now and left the station yesterday. He now understands that the Cheolsu group members should have died at the hands of Young-hyuk, but it seems they are still alive because he left the station in a hurry. Young-hyuk is a regressor who relives his life repeatedly. He is in his 3rd round and has been reborn as a monster monopolizing everything. He must have left without a backward glance to achieve his goal, but he still would tie up any loose ends. He then asks them about Mr. Han because he can't find him anywhere, but suddenly many people appear there and surround them from all sides. Mr. Han is with them and asks others to take him out of there because he is the worst and shouldn't be there. But a man puts his hand on his shoulder and asks him to calm down. He says that they should play nice because they are all survivors. He asks Dokja about his name and tells him his name is in Hochin, and Dokja thinks he has heard that name somewhere before. He has a supporting constellation and is probably the leader of this group. It seems that Cheolsu group works under him as well, and he is probably going to make him pay for beating them half to death. But Shin says the others who came with him told him that he fought the monsters and saved his men. He asks everyone to gather around and says this brave new member there has gathered food for them. Shin laughs and welcomes him to Jumho Station, and Dokja just smiles because he seems to be the attention of everyone for food. After some time, they discuss that 87 people are in the Jumho Station, which is fewer than he thought. Hyunseong says only the ones who were in the cabin and who were near the station survived. Nobody talks about it, but since everyone cleared the first scenario, everyone there survived by killing others, and everyone there is a murderer. Hyunseong reveals that the Jumho Station is divided into the major and minor groups. Mr. Han is among the major group and asks the people to trust him because they will be rescued soon, while the people in the minor group are just hungry and they are waiting for the government to do something for them. Dokja thinks even when 100 murderers gather, they divide themselves into the strong and the weak. Shin comes forward and asks everyone not to lose their hope, and they will leave this place soon. The distribution of food is decided by the primary group, but since they are running low, they have been assigning people to go scavenge for food. Shin says Huiwen is also a part of their group, and she was given too. Sanga asks who she is, and he tells him that the woman she saved her name is Huiwen. To be exact, a few others went too, but only those from the minor group never returned. Dokja asks Hyunseong why he didn't join the major group, and he is sure they would have wanted him as a member of their group. He replies that he just thought he should be in the minor group. He says he is a hypocrite for worrying about right and wrong after everything that has already happened, and Dokja says it's better to worry about right and wrong as a hypocrite than not at all. In the meantime, Chin calls him and asks him for permission to have a word with him. He says he is going to get straight to the point. He offers to join their group, says he can offer him a high position, and hopes he will lead this group with him. Dokja asks what he will do if he refuses his offer, and he replies that it is funny because the thought hasn't even crossed his mind. He calls him a hero who saves people from the monsters with his power and asks him to cooperate for everyone's survival. He asks him to see those poor people suffering, but Dokja still refuses his offer. After a while, Hyunseong asks him if he should have refused like that, and he asks him if he wants him to accept the offer. He replies that he can't stop thinking about what Chin last said to him, and that he can find him if he has a change of heart, but Dokja says it will never happen. Dokja ignores him and asks others to eat the food since they have not eaten well in days, and they are happy that he offers them food. Suddenly, some people angrily come there and ask if it is true that he is monopolizing the food and that he should be sharing food with others. They ask him to put Chin in charge of the food and he will get his shares like everyone else. Dokja thinks this is the most dangerous type of people in an apocalyptic world, and Chin is not someone driven by despair like Cheol Subang. He now remembers Chen from Jumho Station and thinks the hazardous type is the type that uses other people's despair as a fertilizer for power. He is smiling, seeing from a distance, and there are two options: to become a hero after sharing the food or to become a villain after monopolizing the food. He stares at him angrily when an attribute window appears, saying they have entered the second scenario area and have to find and move to the location where the scenario will be activated. Everyone protests before him and asks him to let in Ho Chen redistribute the food and get his share just like everyone else. Chen thinks now he has to choose to influence these people, which is a breeze for him. He thinks Dokja has to do what he says to survive there. He comes forward and says there must have been a misunderstanding because Dokja has already agreed to join their group. They will collect and redistribute the food as they always have and have a long promise to work alongside. Dokja asks him to stop and says he will share the food, but not for free. Everyone was shocked at what he just said and they asked him what he meant by this. The eyes of a few constellations sparkle with excitement, and Dokja says he is not a charity worker and he doesn't trust those people. The people ask him if he wants money, but he replies that he will only accept coins and charges 50 coins per food item. Moreover, he says he will be charging 10 coins per food item from his friends, and a few constellations are relieved that he is not an idiot, and they gift him 100 coins as a reward. The girl from earlier says she will start paying immediately, and she doesn't need food for free. She introduced herself as Hui Wenjiang and thanked him for helping her earlier. She then calls Songa and Hyunseong and asks them to get a hold of themselves because this is no time to sulk because Dokja risked his own life to retrieve these foods. She asks them if they are planning just to leech off him like the rest of them, and Songa says she also doesn't want any freebies. He then teaches them the way to trade coins. One has to touch their index finger to the other and think of how many coins they want to exchange, and that's it. Gilyong Lee has paid him 20 coins, and when he asks him, he replies that 10 for the chocolate from this morning. Huiwen says Gilyong is better than those shameless adults, and with this, a few constellations have shown an interest in the incarnation of Gilyong Lee. She exclaims that it's actually the primary group that is monopolizing all the food there. She says everyone else is being fed and bred and then dragged off to scavenge for food like cattle to the slaughter, just like she was this morning. Everyone does seem to have no problems with what the primary group is doing. Hyunseong asks him to sell the food for 10 coins to everyone just as he did to them, but Dokja says they will wait and see. At night, many people have slept, and Hyunseong asks him to get some rest, and he will keep watch, but he refuses and says he has some stuff to take care of. Meanwhile, someone calls them from behind, and the following day, Huiwen is shocked that he has sold everything. Dokja thinks she is not as frail as he thought she was, and says it wasn't just the minor group who had bought the food overnight, but the major group also bought it. Meanwhile, Chen calls everyone and says they will limit food distribution from today to 3 biscuits per person. He says the search party gets more food than that, and they are welcome to join the search party if they want more food. However, hardly anyone makes it back when they join the search party, and only the Chiolsu gang members make it back alive. He asks the people to go and scavenge for food themselves. He exclaims there is still a way for them to get food even if they don't join the search party, and says Dokja has taught him a valuable lesson yesterday. Dokja remembers it was the major group who bought over half of the food he scavenged, and they did pay for it in full though. Now Chen says Dokja was right and that anything can be free in this world. They have to prove their worth if they want to eat, and they will exchange their food for anything that seems proper. He thanks Dokja for teaching him a valuable lesson, and everyone stares at him angrily, saying this all happened because of him. Dokja thinks he was wondering why these people were acting like such idiots, and now he gets that Chin has the insight skill, and Huiwen calls him and says the major group is just monopolizing the food again. He just tried to promote transactions between people to weaken the power of the major group. Dokja thinks he just wanted them to stand up for themselves, but he shouldn't have sold the food to the major group. However, he did this, and now he has more coins, around 1,450. Huiwen asks him what he plans to do now, and she asks Sangha if they should trust him. Sangha replies that she totally depends him, and they ask him if he left some food for himself, but Dokja reacts he has sold all of it. They are shocked at his action, and Huiwen again asks Sangha if they should trust him. Meanwhile, Dilyong comes to him and offers him a chocolate, but he refuses and asks him to have it. He then asks others to eat the food they bought yesterday and strongly recommends that they finish it by the end of today. At the same time, Chen sells the food for 200 coins each, while the people haven't that many coins left. After some time, he looks toward a railway track, and Huiwen tells him everyone who went that way died. She asks him if he is thinking of going there and asks him if she thanked him for saving her life yesterday. She thanks him again and shows him a man who walks with a limp over there and says he is the one who tried to rape her. She asks him not to lay a finger on him because he is her prey. Dokja thinks she would have ended up dead if it wasn't for him, and she is the type of constellation she would be interested in. He wonders if she has a character profile and finds out that 3 constellations are interested in her, but she hasn't accepted any one of them. Suddenly, she shouts and asks him if he saw they had taken the woman and the old lady. He follows her and asks what she will do, and she will stop them because if they join the search party, there's no way they will make it back alive. Dokja asks her to stop and says they will starve to death if they stay there. She thinks her personal attribute is a crouching figure, which may not sound special, but this is a rare super evolutionary attribute in TWSA. She asks him if she is supposed to watch, and Dokja thinks the crouching figure is a common attribute, but has the potential to evolve into a rare or even a legendary attribute based on the incarnation's experience. Dokja says stopping then won't change a thing, and even if they stop them now, the same thing will happen repeatedly because of the food shortage. Dokja thinks he should think about having her as a companion, and one thing that bothers him is that she has the demon-slaying skill along with the crouching figure attribute. He thinks she could end up becoming an indiscriminate murderer, and he tells her the root of the problem is food. He says they should get rid of the root of the problem and thinks he should be there any minute now. In the meantime, Dokkaebi appears there and asks everyone about how they are. He asks them to see if Dokkaebi, who was in charge of this channel, is currently being disciplined, so there is another Dokkaebi who will be in charge of the current scenario. He smirked and asked why everyone there looked so peaceful. He added an additional penalty to the scenario, and all foods would be removed. The food flies in the air, and Dokkaebi laughs and says they should have worked harder to complete the scenario. He destroys all the food items and asks everyone to start the party. The attribute windows appear there, and Dokja smiles and thinks this is more like TWSA. An additional penalty and category survival fee have been added to the scenario. 100 coins will be withdrawn daily at midnight as a survival fee, and they will die if they have insufficient funds to pay the survival fee. The survival fee will be collected until the second main scenario is cleared. They have entered the second scenario area, and they have to find and move to the location where the scenario will be activated. After some time, Jin gathers everyone and says he has an emergency announcement to make. Given their current situation, it looks like they will need more people for the search party, and from this point onward, they won't be sharing any food with people who refuse to join the search party. He thinks he didn't expect there to be an additional penalty and wonders if Dokja had known that would happen. Sangha is sad about her food, and Dokja says he asked her to eat them. He knows what Chen thinks right now because he is reading his mind, and his understanding of Chen has increased. He thinks Chen may be suspicious of him, but he can't be sure he knew about the food penalty beforehand. Sangha asks him if he knew this would happen, and he replies that he has a suspicion that it would happen, so he thinks of what the dokkaebi would do to make them suffer the most. However, he didn't expect them to add a survival penalty that 100 coins would be withdrawn at midnight as a survival fee. He never knew that TWSA would pull something like this because this wasn't in the original novel. Hyunseong comes to him and asks what they should do now, or if they should join the search party too. But he replies they won't go above ground because that place is a death trap. He says they will need to find a new food source since the world around them has changed, but Dokja points toward a direction. They seem to understand what he is trying to say, and Dokja reveals they are going monster hunting. They are going to follow the rails, and they need a team who will work on completing the scenario. Dokja thought Chin would lash out at them for not joining the search party, but he guesses he feels reassured that he is staying away from his group. His understanding of Chin has increased. Now he thinks that every time he makes a favorable comment on a character, earns their trust, or guesses what they are thinking, the level of understanding increases. He has probably done the latter, and thanks to that, he can read his mind and know his feelings with this increased level of understanding. Chin asks him if he let a group member join their party, and Dokja thinks there is no way he would have let them off that easy. They also want to know how the scenario can be cleared. They are about to go when Mr. Han stops Sangha and says it's quite dangerous there, so she shouldn't go. Hyunseong asks him if he is sure about this, and he replies that he is no threat to them, so it should be fine. He then asks about Huiwen because she hasn't fully recovered yet, but she says he should be worried about Gilyoung, not her. She says the road ahead is dangerous and they will not just charge ahead. Hyunseong says it might be a good idea to send Gilyoung and the Huiwen back. Huiwen calls him and says she may not be as good as he is, but she still knows how to fight and used to practice kendo. Dokja calls them and says they too must be forgetting something that a few days ago, the world they lived in changed completely. Saying women and children are physically weak is prejudice, and anyone can become strong when they increase their stats. He calls Gilyoung and asks him to show his stats to the people, and he uses his light skill to make a path toward a cockroach. Gilyoung says his attribute is called Bug Collector, and he can have simple conversations with insects. It says there is nothing up ahead, and they will be safe for at least another 100 steps. He thanks Huiwen for her concern and says he didn't come all the way there to be a burden to them all. She says it looks like the human corpses aren't the only corpses there, and the road up ahead looks pitch black as if there's a wall blocking the way. Suddenly, a new sub-scenario arrives in front of everyone hunting for food, and they have to hunt and cook a monster to consume it as food. On their way, they find a dead-tier subterranean ground rat, and Dokja knows that ground rats live underground and are pack hunters. They are known to be highly persistent in hunting their prey, and he thinks it won't be easy to move about since the tunnels that connect the different stations are full of monsters. It must be Young-hyuk who killed them. Hyunseong asks them if these won't be enough for them to clear the scenario, but the clear condition says that they have to hunt. He asks Huiwen if she is good at kendo, and gives them some weapons that look like they have traveled back in time to the Stone Age. Dokja says they will need to be sharper, so he asks them to try sharpening them on a rock lying nearby. The attribute window says he has successfully obtained weapons using his intellect, and a few constellations are interested in this primitiveness of humans. He knows what to do because TWSA has a detailed chapter on butchering monsters, and he asks everyone if they have left some coins. He asks them to invest all their coins into strength, stamina, and agility, going only enough to pay the survival fee. He says this may sound cruel, but he doesn't expect all of them to survive. They have tried to keep themselves alive. In the meantime, many monsters appear there, and the sub-scenario hunting for food begins. Everyone starts fighting with them and tries to kill the monsters with their stamina. Soon, Huiwen lost one, and she used her weapon to attack the other with her weapon. Sangha also stabs one of the monsters, and Dokja thinks they are doing better than he expected. Huiwen comes to him and asks how many he has killed, and he replies that he has killed 4 and Hyunseong killed 3, while Sangha got 2. He thinks he didn't use his full power, but Hyunseong only killed 1 less than him, while he has invested a fortune into his stats. He checks his profile and finds out that he has used a started pack, which is a premium package incarnation that can be used only when the average of their overall stats is below level 10. It increases the level of each stat by 1 and grants incarnations the skill Weapon Proficiency, which is very useful when they are starting. He thinks Hyunseong is quite strong, and it looks like the Master of Steel has taken quite a liking to him. Songha calls them and asks how they are supposed to cook them, and she doesn't think they can eat them raw. Dokja says they can't eat them now, but he is sure they will find a way, and everyone starts staring at him. Hyunseong says he always wanted to ask him if he knew something about their situation, and he thinks this is how the regressors must have felt in the novel. Some of them claimed they just had a hunch or lied like he lied to Young Hyuk-yu. He is notified that the constellation secretive plotter looks forward to his decision. Suddenly, a monster attacks Mr. Han from behind and drags him away while he shouts for help. Sangha grabs his hand and drags away with him too, while the constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is upset by the near-certain cliffhanger. The monster takes them underground, and they can't do anything to help him. Huiwon says she knew he would get them into trouble. After some time, Dokja goes on his own and only takes Gilyong with him while they ask him if it is okay. He replies that Gilyong's ability will help him track the monsters down and asks Hyunseong to look after Huiwon because she is not doing so well. Hyunseong glances at her, feels something weird about her, and says Dokja will signal them when something happens, so they should wait and see. He is going to the place where the ground rats reside, and it is called the Dark Fold because all light is absorbed, and it is difficult to tell which way is up or down. Gilyong has grabbed his hand and is showing him the path, and he thinks if it weren't for his interspecies skill, then he may have needed to use coins there. Gilyong calls him and asks if he let it go on purpose, and surprisingly, he asks him what he meant by this. Gilyong said when the monster took away Mr. Han and Sangha, he intentionally let it go. He was watching him at the moment and asked him why he did that. The constellations of the absolute good align with his evil deed, and Dokja wonders why he was watching him while that was happening. He doesn't think hiding things from him would do him any good because he is a sharp-witted kid. He replies that he did this because of the ground rat's habit, and they have a habit of storing anything they hunt in their lair. They sometimes store rare or precious items, but getting to the lair is difficult, so the only way to get there is to follow the tunnels they dig. He knew that it would take Mr. Han, but he didn't expect Sangha to get dragged with him. Gilyong asks him if he is after the items, but he calls him a liar because he wouldn't have saved him in the subway if it were just the items he was after. He grabs his hand and says he believes in him and a few constellations like him. He then gives him 200 coins. He doesn't get what Gilyong sees in him, and he thinks he is mature for his age, but he is still a kid. He can only say that because he is oblivious to the fact that this world is full of vile grown-ups taking advantage of his maturity. They have almost reached there, and Gilyong asks him if he is God or perhaps a protagonist. Dokja is shocked at his question and thinks he is sharper than expected. He replies that he is neither a god nor a protagonist. In fact, he is always envious of protagonists. Gilyong says they will be granted a wish if he knows something about this world after they clear all the scenarios. In stories like these, there is always a reward at the very end, and Dokja thinks those who have adapted to this world suffer through it in their own way. Some become mad, others become zealots, and some become irrationally optimistic. He is lucky they are in the dark, and Jeon can't see his expressions right now, so he says they will definitely get a reward at the end. They have almost reached there and are notified that the sub-scenario has been updated. They have entered the ground rat's treasure trove, and he asks Gilyong to keep quiet because treasure's not the only thing they store there. The place has been guarded by many ground rats who appear there, and they hear Mr. Han and Sangha talking to each other. He blames Sangha, saying he wouldn't have been dragged into this if she hadn't gotten in the subway. She asks him what her getting on the subway has to do with anything of this, and he replies that she always commutes on her bicycle. Sangha asks him if he is the one who stole her bike, but he changes the topic and says he offered to give her a ride home, but she rejected his offer, and this all happened because of her. Dokja now understands why he was on the subway that day, and Mr. Han confesses that he stole her bike that day. She asks him why he is shouting at her, and he takes her bike, which is called stealing. The constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, has grown tired of the petty argument. Dokja also tires of their argument, thinks they can't be helped, and moves to his target. Mr. Han asks Sangha if he ever made a move on her and says he just wanted to drive her home out of the goodness of his heart. In the meantime, Dokja takes out his thorn and throws it toward the place where Mr. Han and Sangha are. Mr. Han observes the attack and shouts, thinking he attacked him. The constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is pleased by him, and he is gifted 100 coins. Sangha is happy to see him there, but suddenly, the wall cracks and many bugs come out of it. The ground rats also surround them, and Dokja thinks even considering this is within the depths of the dark fold, black ether overflows to manifest black flames in the nucleus of the dark root. He appears wherever there is a dark root, and the monster is called the Warden of the Dark has appeared. The sub-scenario has been updated, and he has to defeat the Warden. Gilyong is scared to see him, but he asks him to relax and go ahead. He thinks all the insects connected to Gilyong exploded, and he must have taken considerable mental damage from that. He asks how often he can use interspecies communication and replies that he may use it once or twice. Sangha asks him for help quickly, and he takes out a dagger and cuts the stem. He only cuts the stem and the blade's already blunt, so this is the power of the demonic species. He is a Tier 7 demonic species, Warden of the Dark, and all the monsters, those of the demonic species, are incredibly unique. The treasures collected by ground rats are life sacrifices they make to the demonic species, and even if they are at the same level, the demonic species have the upper hand over other monsters. The Warden of the Dark has received the demonic king's blessing, and Dokja thinks this isn't good because he wants to avoid fighting it at all costs. The Warden speaks some weird language and doesn't even understand what it's saying. The Warden of the Dark spews an aura of fear upon him, and his personal skill, the fourth wall, has nullified fear's effects. The Warden of the Dark rushes upon him to attack, and Dokja wonders what he should do now. The situation is not good, and Gilyong seems to be in bad condition. The Warden says another thing, but they can't understand. Meanwhile, Sangha interrupts them and says the word mother, and Dokja asks him to get back, and she tells him that the monster just said the word mother. He is shocked that she can understand his language and wonders how she can be so fluent in the languages of the demonic species. Sangha has activated the skill, Interpretation Level 3, and he asks her what it says. She replies that it's asking them to be a mother. She wonders how she can be a mother when she is not even married yet, and Mr. Han asks why he should be a mother when he should be a father. The Warden of the Dark forwards his stem and puts it in Mr. Han's mouth. He puts his S-stem inside his body, and Dokja now releases what it meant when it said mother. He asks Sangha if she has no plans to give birth anytime soon. It is revealed that the demonic species impregnate other species with their offspring, and he is doing that process with Mr. Han. He reacts in time and cuts the stem, and the Warden of the Dark shouts with pain. He then tries to attack Sangha, but he blocks his attack again and puts a barrier against him to save them all. But the monster attacks them again and breaks the barrier in no time. Dokja is shocked that he breaks the barrier and thinks the Warden wasn't placed there intentionally to be killed like the ichthyosaur. He is so powerful that he has no chance of beating him, and he plans to grab the treasure after waiting for the Warden to leave. However, he always has a plan B, just in case. He calls Dokkaebi and asks him if he is watching, and he appears there, asking how he knew about this. He replies that he should have received an item in the mail by now and needs him to give that to him. Dokkaebi replies this is none of his business because Bihyong Dokkaebi is in charge of that. Dokja replies that he is there to do Bihyong's job and asks him to see that the constellations are on edge because of what's happening. The constellation prisoner of the golden headband keeps browbeating the Dokkaebi Biryu, and the constellation demonic Jude of fire threatens the Dokkaebi Biryu. Dokkaebi agrees and says he is doing this just once and is only doing this because it might make things interesting. He is notified that an item has arrived from the auction house, and it replaces the thing he gave to Dokkaebi earlier in the serpent's body. He demanded broken faith, and now he has obtained it. He is exempt from paying commission due to his contract. He grabs the item and is now ready to attack the Warden of Dark. Dokkaebi asks him if he can even fight with something like that and tells him that the thing is broken and he won't be able to use it unless he has a specific skill. This item is called Broken Faith, and it is a grade D item. He thinks he already knows that much and wouldn't have bought this in the first place if he didn't. He is notified that the equipped item is too worn out to use and its durability is too low to be effective. Dokkaebi is also scared of the Warden of the Dark, while Dokja releases much energy from the Broken Faith. He thinks he purchased a skill from Bihyong after he hunted the serpent and activated his skill, White Star Weapon Aura, and Broken Faith reacts to his magic power. The Blade of Faith has been activated, and when the monster tries to attack him again, he dodges his attack and swings the sword with his full might. He has cut one of his stems and thinks he has at least a chance because the Blade of Faith is the most effective weapon against demonic species. He doesn't have skills like combat sense or blade proficiency, and this skill uses up a lot of mana power. Having a mighty sword doesn't make him an excellent swordsman, but he is not a swordsman but a reader. He is notified that the effect of his attribute is improving his memory of pages he has already read. He then activates his skill, Bookmark, and rushes toward him to attack. He thinks a reader should fight like a reader. The activation time has been shortened due to the low level of the Bookmark skill, and his activation time is 1 minute. His understanding of the character is common, so his skills were only partially activated. He then activates Weapons Proficiency Level 1, reaches the Warden of the Dark, and starts cutting his stem. The Warden cries in pain, and Dokja now thinks about going to the other side. After it attacks twice as always, it pauses for a brief moment, and Dokja decides to pound on that moment. The Warden attacks in pain and speaks in demonic language, and Sangha translates it that he is asking how he knew where he would attack. Dokja says he must read a lot because there is a long way to go. Finally, he has defeated the Warden of Dark, and Dokkaebi is shocked to see that and asks the constellations if they saw that. The constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, widens his eyes in surprise, and several constellations doubt their own eyes. The constellation, Prisoner of the Golden Headband, pulls his hair out in excitement and has gifted 500 coins. Dokkaebi is shocked that he kills an ether blade in a scenario so early, and Dokja deactivates bookmark number 2, and his understanding of Hyunseong Lee has increased too. He tells Dokkaebi that it isn't an authentic ether blade, to be exact, and the actual thing is much more powerful, and he replies that he has only added White Star Weapon Aura to Broken Faith, which creates a blade when it absorbs magic power. He is notified that the durability of Broken Faith has run out, and the item can no longer be used. He is so impressed by him and asks why Bihyong's channel is full of people like him, while Dokja demands the reward for completing the scenario. He is notified that the condition of the sub-scenario has been fulfilled and that he has received 500 coins. Several constellations are impressed by his master plan, and Dokkaebi asks him if he is not going to finish him off. Dokja replies that he doesn't believe in killing, and he doesn't enjoy taking lives carelessly. While he thinks he is lying, Dokkaebi says he will be rewarded if he kills him, and he will be the first to kill a Tier 7 demonic species, which would grant him over 7,000 coins. The constellation, Demonic Judge of Fire, is impressed by him, and he has gifted 100 coins. Dokkaebi asks him to kill the Warden, and he will get 7,000 coins, but he again refuses to kill him. The constellation, Secretive Plotter, smiles at him wickedly and gifts him 100 coins. Dokja says he needs to open some treasure chests. In the meantime, Mr. Han stabs his weapon in the Warden's chest, and the demonic species, the Warden of the Dark, has been slain. He laughs and says he can also become strong because he is the first to successfully hunt a Tier 7 demonic species monster. He has received 8,000 coins, and his contributors are Dokja Kim and Myung-go Han. Mr. Han laughs at him and says this is precisely why people like him always end up on the bottom, while he is notified that many constellations have noticed his existence because he has defeated the Warden of the Dark. He is surprised to see a large number of messages and asks Dokja what they are about. Dokja says he didn't finish him off on purpose, and it is revealed that demonic species monsters are connected to the demon kings they worship through the dark root and inherit a portion of their power. Therefore, killing a demonic species monster would make him the target of the demon king's hatred. The curse of the god of wrath and lust will produce his greatest nightmare come true, and he doesn't know what will happen, but Mr. Han will experience something horrific. The constellation, Secretive Plotter, is impressed by his evil scheme and also recommends his scenario on the star stream. He then opens up the treasure chest and looks at the treasures they have found there. Sangha sees a mana recovery bracelet, and Gilyong sees a rusty iron shield of grade D. They think the pieces of equipment are not as extravagant as they expected, and he thinks it's probably because the protagonist, who left for Yaksu yesterday, already took his fill. However, there is still one more to go, and they find another item named Mana Brazier, which is a maximum of 1 per incarnation. He thinks he might know what it does and thinks it is actually a key item of the current scenario. He then cooks ground rat leg on it, and Sangha asks him if he thinks it is okay to eat it. He tastes it and says it is okay to eat, and they also cook rat legs for themselves. Several constellations are smacking their lips, and Dokja thinks reading about it and actually tasting it are two different things. Mr. Han interrupts them and asks him for permission to cook his piece of meat. He also apologizes to him for his behavior, but he asks him not to mind him and dig in. He says he needs to eat to store up the energy to fight his curse, and they all start eating there. After a while, Sangha asks him how he knew about all this, and he even knows how to cook a monster that they have never seen before. She says it is probably because he has read a lot of fantasy web novels, and all she can do is stuff her face with the food he risked his life for. He says she could understand the monster from earlier because she has been studying hard to learn foreign languages. Sangha observes he has been staring at the box for some time now, and she asks him if he is going to use that for something later. She tells him there is some writing on the surface, and Dokja wonders if she can even read that language. She read the words written on the box, and Dokja thanked her for deciphering the words. From his memory, the first to discover a random item box was the flying fox, and even Jung-hyuk, who took the other mana brazier, wouldn't have known that the real treasure there was this black box. Sangha says he can keep all the items they find there for himself, which is the right thing to do. Dokja thinks there is a strange box they find if they wander the early scenarios. He puts an object into the box and places the Tier 7 demonic species monster core that he got from the Warden of the Dark, along with Broken Faith. He thinks no one knows that it is a limited edition premium item, and Dokkaebi tells him that if he places low-grade items into the box and closes the lid, it spits out a guaranteed high-grade item. Dokkaebi ends his stream by saying he doesn't know what the box is doing there, and he is notified that the resulting item will be a bladed weapon because he has placed a balded weapon in the box. Soon, random loot has been activated, and the item placed in the box related to a specific constellation, and the chance of the resulting item being associated with that particular constellation has increased dramatically. The chance of the resulting item being related to that particular constellation has increased dramatically. Dokja thinks he will be fine with anything higher than in a grade, and is notified that a high-grade item has emerged. The remaining number of uses for the rando item box has been reduced to 0. He thinks it was a premium item that the Star Streams Management Center recalled because any item that gave him a higher grade item in return for a lower grade item could threaten the scenario's balance. He takes out a sword, which is called an Unbreakable Faith, and it is a constellation artifact. It once belonged to the hero Kaizenix, who led Grunted into the Grand Age of Magic in the past. Sangha says it is a fantastic item, and he is shocked to see a constellation artifact, and it's way above an alphabetically graded item. He again asks them if it is okay for him to keep them, and they ask him to keep them all. He is notified that he has obtained an artifact, and the owner of the artifact has become curious about him. He then asks them to head back because there are plenty of ground rats where they came from, so they will only need to take the mana brazier back with them. Gilyong calls him and says there aren't any insects around, and they find out that all the insects explode because of the Warden of the Dark. Gilyong says there is one monster there, but he utters some words that they can't understand. Suddenly, he releases an immense amount of energy, and Sangha tells him that something's wrong with Gilyong. His nose starts bleeding, and he screams in a loud voice. Many high-tier monsters are above ground because the vibration is coming from above. He calls Gilyong and asks him to snap out of it, and he thinks he is trying to channel a monarch species insect right now. He asks him to stop using his skill at once, and he comes into consciousness and stops his connection with the monster. Dokja is shocked that he managed to summon a monarch species insect, and they almost got buried alive. He then forbids him to use his skill for a while, and asks him not to use it again until he says so. He says they will get lost if they enter the black tide right now, and they should wait a little and move on when a tiny insect appears in the area. Sangha says if they need to find their way back, then she can help because she has skills similar to Gilyong's. It's a skill that lets them find a way using a thread, and she tried the thread to do something earlier when the ground rats kidnapped them. Dokja asks her about her personal attributes, but she hesitates to tell. Dokja understands her reasoning and asks her never to disclose her unique attributes. Dokja thinks it seems that she made an additional pledge when she signed her Starstream contract, which forbids her from leaking any information, and if she does, it would cost her life. He doesn't know which constellation she is signed to, but it looks like her constellation has decided to train her. He thinks he could find out if his character profile skill worked, and he again tries to see her character profile, but it says she doesn't have a registered character profile. He is then notified that the system is currently collecting information on the target character, and he finds it strange because he has never seen this message before.